Ethan Caldwell was more than just wealthy. He was a self-made billionaire, the kind of man who turned boardroom deals into gold and transformed risky investments into thriving empires. With a net worth climbing past $5 billion, his portfolio spanned real estate, luxury resorts, and cutting-edge tech firms. But lately, his empire wasn't the only thing on his mind. Despite his financial dominance, Ethan felt a growing unease gnawing at him. He had built his business empire on trust, loyalty, and ironclad contracts. But could the same be said for the people closest to him? In the corporate world, betrayal came with dollar signs. In marriage, it could cost far more than money. It could destroy a legacy. Rumors had reached him quietly, like whispers carried on Wall Street wind. His wife, Isabella, glamorous, refined, and the image of high society elegance, had been spending long evenings with someone else. Not just any someone, but Victor Dane, a smooth-talking venture capitalist whose name often popped up in scandals and aggressive takeover rumors. Ethan's instincts told him to investigate, but he knew from experience that truth was slippery. In business, the numbers told the story. In relationships, you needed a plan to smoke out the truth. That was when the idea came, a strategy so bold it would rival his most daring acquisitions. He would fake a medical catastrophe. The plan was precise, like a corporate raid. Ethan's team of trusted private lawyers and a discreet medical consultant helped him craft the perfect deception. A staged car accident, a forged hospital admission, paperwork indicating severe head trauma, and the piece de resistance, a fabricated diagnosis, irreversible coma. For the outside world, Ethan Caldwell would be a man on life support, trapped in a silent prison. In reality, he would be observing from the shadows, with hidden cameras in the hospital room, feeding him live footage. He wanted to see if Isabella's love was genuine, or if she had been silently positioning herself to inherit his fortune and control his empire. The night before the staged accident, Ethan stood in the penthouse study, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The lights of his corporate headquarters shimmered in the distance, a reminder of everything he had built. In business, you test loyalty through contracts, he whispered to himself. In life, you test it through sacrifice. Tomorrow, his empire wouldn't be the only thing under scrutiny. His marriage would be too. The accident was headline material. The New York Financial Tribune reported, "Billionaire mogul Ethan Caldwell in critical condition following car crash." Stock analysts speculated what his absence would mean for Caldwell Global Holdings. Lawyers in sleek midtown offices whispered about the fate of billion-dollar contracts. Social media buzzed with sympathy and gossip. Isabella arrived at the hospital mid-morning, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, her silk scarf fluttering like a banner of wealth and status. She was accompanied by Victor Dane. Cameras in the lobby caught them walking in together, footage Ethan would later review frame by frame. Inside the private VIP suite, Isabella sat at the bedside, her manicured hand resting lightly on Ethan's still arm. To anyone watching without sound, it looked like devotion, but through the hidden audio feed, Ethan caught every word. "This changes everything," Victor murmured, his tone low but tinged with greed. Isabella didn't flinch. "If he doesn't recover, the estate transfers to me. The board will have no choice but to keep me as the public face of the company until they find a replacement CEO." Ethan's pulse quickened, not from the beeping monitors, but from cold rage. He had built safeguards in his will, but he never thought he'd hear this level of calculated ambition from the woman he had once sworn to love. They talked in coded language about asset liquidation, restructuring the company, and moving investments offshore. Victor casually mentioned a Cayman Islands account, and Isabella didn't question it. After they left, Ethan's longtime assistant and most trusted confidant, Claire Bennett, entered quietly. She was the one person in the entire operation who knew the truth. A former military intelligence officer turned corporate security head, Claire handled every detail of Ethan's covert observation. They came in together? Ethan whispered through the concealed earpiece in her hand. "Yes," Claire replied, her voice clipped but controlled. "And they're already talking like the inheritance is a done deal." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had seen hostile takeovers in boardrooms, but this was personal. And unlike in business, Here there were no shareholders to protect him, just his own heart and the empire at stake. That night, watching the hidden camera footage in a secure location across town, Ethan made a decision. The coma test wasn't just about love anymore. It was about unmasking every single person plotting against him and destroying their plans before they destroyed his legacy. For the next 3 days, Ethan lay in the hospital bed under the perfect illusion of unconsciousness. The room was fitted with state-of-the-art surveillance, disguised as medical equipment. Tiny pinhole cameras in the ceiling vents, microphone pickups hidden in the flower arrangements. Even the heart monitor display was a custom device streaming data to Ethan's secure offshore server. Isabella's visits became predictable. Same time each day, accompanied by Victor. But she wasn't the only one making an appearance. On the 4th day, someone Ethan didn't expect entered his room. His younger brother, Daniel Caldwell. Daniel was the black sheep of the family. A failed entrepreneur with a trail of bankrupt startups and a weakness for high-stakes poker. He had never shown interest in the family empire until now. Daniel leaned close to Isabella and Victor. "If Ethan doesn't make it, I want my cut. You know the trust still names me as secondary beneficiary to certain holdings." Isabella smirked. "You'll get your share, but you stay out of company affairs. Victor and I will handle the corporate side. You keep quiet." Victor chuckled. "And make sure the press sees you grieving on cue. We'll need the sympathy votes." Ethan's fists clenched under the hospital blanket. The realization hit him. This wasn't just marital betrayal. It was a full-scale conspiracy involving his own blood. Later that night, Claire slipped in again, moving silently like a shadow. She handed Ethan a small tablet with encrypted playback. "You need to see this." The footage showed Daniel meeting with Victor in a dimly lit restaurant 2 weeks before the accident. On the table were blueprints, not for a building, but for a corporate takeover plan. A hostile acquisition of Caldwell Global Holdings after Ethan was gone. "They're accelerating the timeline," Claire warned. "If they push the board vote before the quarter ends, your absence will make resistance almost impossible." Ethan's mind raced. His test was no longer about simply learning if his wife loved him. It had morphed into a chess game where each move could mean billions or total ruin. He whispered, "We let them think they're winning, and when they make their final move, we flip the board." Claire's lips curved into a razor-thin smile. "Then we start feeding them the bait." The next morning, Isabella arrived in a perfectly tailored cream Chanel suit, her expression flawlessly calibrated for a devoted wife. In one hand, she held a designer tote. In the other, a steaming latte. She kissed Ethan's forehead lightly, a gesture that looked genuine enough for any nurse watching, but Ethan had been married long enough to know when her lips were cold. Claire, now posing as the hospital's lead nurse, began the subtle operation. She accidentally left a thick manila envelope on the side table beside Ethan's bed, labeled in bold letters, "Confidential, offshore assets and emergency transfer instructions." Inside were fabricated documents, a false portfolio claiming Ethan had hidden over $500 million in untraceable assets in a private Caribbean account, accessible only to a spouse with legal power of attorney. It was bait soaked in temptation. From his near-closed eyelids, Ethan caught Isabella's quick glance toward Victor, who was seated casually in the corner, pretending to scroll his phone. Without a word, she slipped the envelope into her tote. Later that evening, the trap tightened. Daniel returned, his designer loafers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. He leaned over Victor and whispered, "She told me about the offshore money. That changes everything. Forget the company. We take the cash, disappear for a while, and come back after the dust settles." Victor's voice was low but sharp. "We're not changing the plan. That account is the perfect leverage for the board takeover. Once we have signatures, Caldwell Global will be ours before the quarter's end." From under the blanket, Ethan's pulse quickened, not from rage, but satisfaction. Every word was being recorded. Every greedy glance, every whispered scheme was another nail in their plan's coffin. That night, Ethan and Claire met in the hospital's staff lounge after hours. The lights were dim, the air heavy with the scent of industrial coffee. Claire connected her tablet to a secure satellite uplink. The audio recording synced instantly to Ethan's private legal team, waiting in New York. 2 more days, Ethan said. We let them feel untouchable. The higher they climb, the harder they'll hit the floor. Claire smirked. Then tomorrow, we plant the final piece of bait. What's that? Ethan asked. Her eyes gleamed. A fake medical report. One that says you've only got 48 hours left to live. The next morning, the hospital was a stage, and every player walked in believing the script was real. Claire, now fully in her lead nurse role, stepped into the room with a solemn face and a thin, cream-colored folder in her hand. She placed it gently on the table beside Isabella and said softly, Mrs. Caldwell, you should know. The latest tests show your husband's organ systems are failing faster than expected. At most, she hesitated for dramatic effect. 48 hours. Isabella's mascaraed eyes widened, but Ethan saw no grief, only calculation. Her perfectly polished nails tapped against the armrest in rapid beats, like a banker counting seconds before a market closes. Within the hour, Victor arrived, practically gliding into the room in his slim-cut charcoal suit. Isabella didn't waste time. We accelerate, she said in a low tone. We move the board meeting to tonight. We need your lawyers to push the power of attorney through before. She glanced at Ethan's still form. Before it's too late. Victor's jaw tightened, and the offshore funds. Her lips curled into a faint, hungry smile. Already secured. All I need is the signature. Once he's gone, there's no contest. From beneath his half-shut eyes, Ethan watched her thumb caress the pen inside her tote, the very pen she planned to use to finalize his betrayal. He could practically hear the legal clock ticking, each second pulling them deeper into their own trap. Meanwhile, Daniel, the stepbrother, slinked into the hospital parking garage for a hushed phone call. Claire, shadowing from a distance, caught every word on a hidden directional mic. He's circling the drain. Daniel whispered to an unknown associate. Victor's playing for the company, but I've got my hands on something better. Once Isabella gets the money transferred, I'll have my cut before they even notice. It was greed splitting greed, exactly what Ethan hoped for. By late afternoon, the conspirators had convened at Victor's penthouse to finalize their moves. Papers were spread across the marble kitchen island, champagne chilling in an ice bucket. Isabella laughed, not the warm, melodic laugh Ethan once loved, but a sharp, glassy one that cracked through the room like a whip. What's left? She asked. Victor tapped the power of attorney form. Just his signature. You'll guide his hand. The nurse will look the other way. And by tomorrow morning, Caldwell Global is ours. Upstairs, Ethan's private security team, disguised as maintenance staff, transmitted the live feed straight to his attorneys. Every smile, every toast, every damning sentence was another brick in the legal wall closing around them. The game was nearly over, but Ethan wanted the final move to be so public, so devastating, that their reputations would never recover. Ethan had spent decades mastering the art of timing in business deals. This time, he was applying the same precision to human betrayal. The trap wasn't going to be a quiet legal takedown. No, this was going to be a public implosion so explosive, it would erase Isabella and Victor from every respectable circle in New York. From his hidden hospital suite, a luxury penthouse floor secretly owned by Caldwell Global, Ethan worked with Claire and his chief legal strategist, Martin Hayes, to orchestrate the reveal. The key was spectacle. If you expose a snake in the dark, it slithers away quietly. But if you shine the brightest light on it, everyone sees it strike. Martin slid a folder across the bed. The shareholders' gala is tomorrow night. Over 200 top investors, media outlets, and even the mayor will be there. We can stream the live footage from Victor's penthouse and your hospital room to the massive projection screens on stage. Ethan's lips twitched into the first genuine smile he'd managed in weeks. Perfect. They'll hang themselves in front of everyone whose opinion they can't afford to lose. That evening, Claire, now acting in plain clothes, visited Isabella's apartment under the guise of delivering an updated medical report. In reality, she planted 2 microcameras in the crystal chandelier above Isabella's dining table, the very spot where she and Victor would celebrate their victory. Meanwhile, Daniel, unaware of the depth of the setup, was busy securing his personal cut in a secret offshore account. Ethan's tech team intercepted every transfer in real time, documenting fraud, conspiracy, and theft. The final piece? Ethan's will, or rather, the fake, will drafted for the sting. The document granted Isabella everything: full ownership of Caldwell Global, liquid assets, properties, on the condition that she signed before his passing. It was bait so irresistible that neither she nor Victor would even think twice. By midnight, everything was wired. Hidden microphones in Isabella's tote bag. Camera feeds from Victor's penthouse directly patched to the shareholders' gala system. Legal team ready to execute emergency court filings the moment the evidence went public. As Claire checked his vitals for the charade, Ethan whispered, "Tomorrow, she'll learn the price of thinking I was too weak to fight back." The next morning, Isabella arrived at the hospital in an immaculate ivory coat, Victor right behind her in his signature tailored suit. She carried the pen. He carried the papers. They were ready to finish the job. Ethan was ready to finish them. The hospital suite was bathed in soft morning light, the air smelling faintly of fresh lilies Isabella had ordered for the farewell moment. Every detail had been carefully staged to tug at the heartstrings of any onlooker. The grieving wife saying goodbye to her dying husband. But today, she wasn't here to mourn. She was here to take everything. Ethan lay in bed, his face pale, breathing slow and shallow, the perfect picture of a man slipping away. Only the slightest flutter in his fingers, known only to Claire, betrayed that he was very much awake and very much aware. Isabella stepped closer, her heels clicking against the polished marble. "Darling," she whispered softly, brushing a hand over his forehead for show. "I'm here. I've brought the papers so things will be easier." Victor, standing beside her, placed a leather folio on the side table. "Once you sign these, everything you've built will be in safe hands." Safe for who? Ethan thought. Hidden behind the mirrored wall, a microcamera captured every angle of the scene, broadcasting it via secure link to the gala's AV team. Across town, in the opulent ballroom, giant LED screens sat dark, waiting for the exact moment to flicker to life. Investors were sipping champagne, unaware they were about to watch the performance of a lifetime. Claire leaned over Ethan's bed, playing her role flawlessly. "Mr. Caldwell," she said gently, "you're too weak to hold a pen. I can help guide your hand." She slid the pen toward his fingers, her eyes briefly locking with his, the unspoken signal that the cameras were rolling and the audio was live. Isabella took Ethan's limp hand, guiding the pen to the first page. Her voice trembled, but not from grief. "Just a few strokes here, and everything will be handled, my love." Victor added, "Think of it as your final gift to the woman who stood by you." The moment the pen touched paper, Ethan let his eyelids twitch, just enough for the monitor beside his bed to beep slightly faster. Isabella didn't notice. What she also didn't notice was the tiny green light on the bouquet of lilies, a disguised 4K lens sending her every word, every smirk, straight to the projection screens miles away. At the gala, murmurs began as the massive screens came alive with the crystal-clear feed. The mayor, top investors, and a dozen journalists turned toward the sudden broadcast of the private hospital moment. Martin Hayes, standing at the back of the room, watched their faces as Isabella leaned over Ethan, her voice honeyed but razor-sharp. "Sign it, Ethan. You're not going to be around much longer." Gasps erupted in the ballroom. The trap was now in motion. Just as Isabella guided Ethan's hand toward the final signature line, the hospital suite door swung open with a sharp click. In stepped Martin Hayes, Ethan's most trusted board member, flanked by 2 security guards in tailored suits. The sudden presence broke the room's air of quiet manipulation. "Isabella," Martin said smoothly, "I'm afraid you'll need to stop right there." She froze, the pen tip hovering over paper. "Martin, what is the meaning of this?" Her voice was coated with feigned outrage, but a flicker of panic danced in her eyes. Martin stepped closer, his phone raised high. "I'd ask you to explain yourself, but I think this will do it for you." He tapped the screen, and the sound of Isabella's own voice filled the room. "Sign it, Ethan. You're not going to be around much longer." The words echoed like a gunshot. Ethan's heart monitor quickened, not from fear, but from satisfaction. Isabella's eyes darted toward the lilies. It was then she spotted the tiny green light hidden among the petals. Her breath caught. You were recording me?" Martin's lips curled into a tight smile. "Not just me. The entire investor gala is watching this live." Victor's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous. You can't." "Actually," Martin cut in, "we can." And we did. Every shareholder, every board member, every potential partner has just seen exactly what kind of grieving wife you are. Outside the suite, footsteps thundered down the hallway. More security arrived, along with Ethan's personal attorney, Laura Kent. She walked straight to the bed, her eyes locking on Isabella. "Mrs. Caldwell, you are hereby barred from making any legal or financial decisions regarding your husband's estate, effective immediately." The color drained from Isabella's face. "You can't do this. He's my husband." Laura's tone was calm but unyielding. "And yet here you are, coercing a man you believe to be dying into signing away billions. The law calls that exploitation." The guard stepped forward. Victor instinctively moved to block them, but Martin's quiet warning stopped him cold. "Try it, and I'll have every detail of your offshore accounts in tomorrow's headlines." Ethan, still comatose, let the tension build a moment longer before allowing his eyelids to flutter again, just enough for Isabella to notice. She took a step back, shaken. The pen slipped from her grasp and rolled across the polished floor, coming to rest at Martin's feet. He picked it up slowly, almost ceremoniously, before turning to the guards. "Escort them out." As Isabella and Victor were led away, their protests echoing down the hall, the live feed to the gala cut out, replaced by the event's golden crest. But the damage was done, reputations destroyed in under 5 minutes. And Ethan Caldwell wasn't finished yet. The hospital room was finally silent. No Isabella. No Victor. Just Ethan, Martin, and Laura. Martin closed the blinds, muting the harsh glare of camera flashes outside. "It's clear now," he said. "You've got your answer." Laura leaned in close to Ethan's ear. "It's time." Ethan's eyes opened fully for the first time in weeks, wide, alert, and brimming with controlled fury. He pushed himself upright with surprising strength, tearing away the thin blanket. The steady beep of the heart monitor quickened, but now from adrenaline, not frailty. "God, it feels good to finally breathe without pretending," he said, voice gravelly but resolute. Martin smirked. "The show's about to start." Ethan swung his legs over the side of the bed. Laura was already beside him, slipping on his tailored navy suit jacket, the same one he'd worn during the last board meeting before his collapse. "You sure you're ready for this?" Laura asked. Ethan gave a short laugh. "I've been ready since the day she kissed Victor at my bedside, thinking I couldn't hear her." They moved toward the suite door. Martin opened it to a wall of cameras, journalists shouting questions over one another. "Mr. Caldwell, are you alive? Was the coma fake? What about your wife's accusations?" Ethan raised a hand for silence. The room obeyed instantly. "I never wanted this spectacle," he began, his voice calm, but cutting through the chaos. "But when you build an empire from nothing, you learn to protect it, and yourself, at all costs. The woman I trusted most saw my illness as an opportunity, and my so-called best friend, he saw a throne to steal." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan stepped forward, the press lights flashing off his cufflinks. "For weeks, I lay in this bed pretending to be powerless. But I heard everything. Every whisper. Every deal they planned to make. Every insult. Every laugh at my expense." He paused, letting the silence weigh heavy. "And now they will face the consequences, legally, financially, and socially." At that moment, 2 detectives entered from the side, badges glinting. Without a word, they walked past Ethan and down the hallway. Seconds later, Isabella's muffled scream echoed back as she was placed in handcuffs. The press surged forward, cameras clicking furiously. Ethan didn't look back. "Sometimes," he said, turning to Martin and Laura, "you have to let people bury themselves. All you have to do is hand them the shovel." He straightened his tie, his expression hardening. "Now, let's get back to running my company." The crowd erupted into questions again as Ethan strode down the hallway. His miraculous recovery, already breaking news, alerts around the globe. The Caldwell Tower boardroom was overflowing. Top executives sat stiffly along the polished walnut table, journalists and camera crews lining the walls, the tension sharp enough to cut. Ethan Caldwell stepped inside, the sound of his Italian leather shoes echoing against the marble floor. Every head turned. No one could reconcile the sight. A man they'd last seen pale and limp in a hospital bed, now standing tall in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his posture radiating controlled authority. "I called this meeting," Ethan began, voice steady, "to address the rumors, the betrayal, and the future of Caldwell Enterprises." Behind him, two large screens lit up. One showed Isabella being escorted into a courthouse in handcuffs. The other displayed Victor's resignation letter, sent moments after learning of her arrest. Ethan looked around the room, making eye contact with each board member. When you spend decades building something, you don't just protect it with security guards and legal contracts. You protect it by knowing who's truly in your corner. His gaze softened for a moment as it landed on Martin and Laura, seated together near the head of the table. "Sometimes," he continued, "loyalty comes from the least expected places." Laura smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Ethan clicked the remote in his hand. A third image appeared, a still from the hospital security footage. Martin quietly adjusting Ethan's blanket at 2 a.m., unaware of the camera, his face full of quiet concern. "That's what integrity looks like," Ethan said. "That's what this company will be built on moving forward." The room erupted in applause, not the polite, forced kind, but a genuine surge of respect. Even the press seemed momentarily subdued. After the meeting, Ethan stepped out onto the rooftop terrace, away from the noise. The city skyline stretched before him, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Laura joined him. "You really pulled it off," she said softly. Ethan smiled, though there was a weight behind it. It wasn't about pulling it off. It was about finally seeing the truth. She tilted her head. "And now that you know." He looked out over the horizon, the wind brushing past them. "Now, I can live free. No shadows, no doubts. Just the people who've proven they deserve to be here." Down in the streets, the crowd outside chanted his name, the story already spreading like wildfire across every major news outlet. Headlines were calling it the greatest corporate comeback in history. Ethan turned back toward the building, his expression resolute. "Let's get back to work. We've got an empire to run." And with that, the man who had pretended to be powerless walked back into the boardroom, this time entirely in control.